The galaxy was old, far older than the small blue planet that had joined its union only a few thousand years ago. For ages, dozens of species lived under the Galactic Accord, a treaty that had prevented war for 3,500 years. The Accord was a promise, signed after a series of bloody wars that no civilization would raise weapons against another. Armies were reduced, fleets kept only for defense, and borders respected. Generations of aliens were born into peace, and most could not even imagine the idea of war. But peace has a strange weakness. The longer it lasts, the softer people become. The longer weapons remain unused, the more leaders forget the reasons they were built. While some saw the Accord as protection, others began to see it as a cage, and none resented that cage more than the Dravari Empire. The Dravari were ancient, proud, and cruel. Long ago, they had been the strongest force in the galaxy. Their fleets darkened the stars, and their rivals bent to them in fear. But the Accord had stripped them of their power. They were forced to sign it after defeats and rebellions drained their empire. For thousands of years, they hid their hate, pretending to honor the truce. Secretly, they rebuilt. Quietly, they dreamed of revenge. Now, 3,500 years after the signing of the Accord, the dream became reality, the breaking of peace. The announcement spread across every communication channel in the galaxy. The Dravari High Emperor himself, wrapped in ceremonial armor and standing beneath banners older than many civilizations, declared that the Accord was dead. His words echoed like thunder. The age of weakness is over. The Accord is broken. The Dravari rise again, kneel or burn. Across the stars, fear spread like wildfire. Worlds that had known only peace for generations trembled. Entire civilizations had no memory of war. Their military fleets were little more than ceremonial. Colonies sent panicked messages to their governments, and governments sent desperate questions to the Galactic Council. Could the truce really be over? Was what truly returning? Aliens in fear on the council world of Aerith, delegates gathered in shock. They argued, shouted, and begged each other for answers. The scaled Chirac spoke of surrender. The winged Lithari demanded defenses that did not exist. The timid Vrani wept openly in their seats. They all remembered fragments of history, stories of what the Dravari had once done to their enemies. Burning cities, enslaving worlds, erasing cultures. One voice cut through the chaos. It was the delegate of the Kavaran Union, a tall crystalline being whose species had lived since before the Accord. "There is one among us," he said slowly, "who does not fear war. There is one species who might stand against the Dravari." The chamber grew quiet. Every alien turned their eyes to the human representative. Humanity's reaction ambassador Elena Vance sat calmly at her desk, hands folded, a faint smile on her lips. She had listened to hours of panic and despair, but she had not once looked afraid. When she stood, her words were simple. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "the Dravari want war. And if they want war, they'll get it." The hall erupted in cries of disbelief. How could she speak so lightly? Did humans not understand the danger? One Vrani screeched, "Are you mad? The Dravari fleets outnumber anything you possess. This is not a game." But Elena only smiled wider. "To you it is terror, to us. It is Tuesday." Her words confused them. But they would soon learn. The laughing species news of the Dravari threat reached human space quickly. Entire worlds lit up with the announcement. Colonies, fleets, and stations received the Emperor's speech. Most species would have held mourning rituals. Most would have hidden in fear. Humans did something different. On Mars, young men and women gathered in the streets, painting signs that read, "Welcome back, Dravari, we've been bored." On Luna, soldiers prepared for deployment with songs and laughter, joking that the Dravari had terrible fashion sense. Across Earth itself, comedians interrupted news broadcasts with parody skits mocking the Emperor's speech. Within hours, 100 memes spread across the galaxy's networks. Humans wearing fake crowns, pretending to be Dravari leaders, declaring, "We're back." In ridiculous voices, aliens watching could not believe it. They stared at the broadcasts in horror and confusion. The Dravari had declared war and humanity was laughing. Why? An ancient explanation. On the library world of Orcs, an elderly scholar named Kalari searched through human records. She was not human herself. She belonged to the insectoid Vari, but she had spent her life studying human culture. She understood what others did not. When her students begged her for answers, she explained patiently, "Humans come from a death world. Their planet is filled with danger. Storms that destroy entire regions, beasts with teeth sharper than steel, plagues that wiped out millions. For humans, fear is not unusual, it is life. And when life is filled with fear, one must find a way to survive it. The students tilted their heads, confused. But why do they laugh? Because laughter is their weapon, Kelari said softly. When they laugh, they show the universe that fear cannot break them. They laugh at death itself. That is what makes them strong. The first test, the Dravari wasted no time. To prove their might, they struck at a small colony belonging to the Latari. The colony had no real defenses. Its people begged for mercy, but the Dravari showed none. Their fleet rained fire from orbit and entire cities burned. The news spread quickly. The galaxy gasped in horror. Many races began to consider surrender. If the Dravari could destroy colonies so easily, what chance did anyone have? But then something unexpected happened. A human patrol fleet was already nearby, only a handful of ships, nothing compared to the Dravari armada. Everyone expected them to retreat, to wait for reinforcements. Instead, the humans attacked. The Battle of Corinth V, the battle was uneven. The Dravari had numbers, power, and arrogance. The humans had little but speed, strange tactics, and their unnerving laughter. As their ships weaved through enemy fire, human pilots shouted jokes over the comms. One laughed that the Dravari ships looked like angry bananas. Another joked that their weapons sounded like firecrackers on New Year's. Aliens listening to the broadcast were horrified. How could humans laugh in battle? But as the minutes passed, horror turned into awe. Against all odds, the small human fleet outmaneuvered the larger force. One by one, Dravari ships exploded. When the battle ended, the Dravari were in retreat, humiliated by a group they had mocked as young and weak. For the first time, the galaxy saw it clearly. Humanity was not afraid. Humanity was dangerous. The whisper of hope. When news of the victory spread, something changed. The galaxy, once drowning in despair, felt the first spark of hope. If humans could laugh in the face of the Dravari, maybe others could too. If humans could fight, maybe surrender was not the only answer. On the council world, delegates whispered to each other. Some still trembled, but others began to look at humanity differently, no longer as reckless newcomers, but as leaders in a time of darkness. Ambassador Elena Vance stood once more before the chamber. She spoke quietly, but every word carried weight. "The truce is over," she said. "The Dravari think that means fear. But they've forgotten one thing. Fear does not rule us. We rule fear." And for the first time since the Emperor's speech, the chamber did not echo with panic. It echoed with silence and the faintest hint of hope. The galaxy had seen the first spark of hope, but hope was fragile. One small victory at Corinth V could not erase the fear that lived in the hearts of dozens of civilizations. The Dravari Empire still had thousands of fleets, armies larger than entire planets, and a cruel history that stretched back before most species had learned to write. For many, surrender still seemed wiser than resistance, but the humans did not see it that way. To them, the war was not a nightmare but a challenge, one that made them smile instead of tremble. Panic in the stars. After the fall of the Latari colony, many races held emergency meetings. On the crystalline world of Sael, the Shirak assembled their leaders. They were a lizard-like race with glittering scales, and their voices shook as they argued. Some demanded to send gifts to the Dravari to prove loyalty. Others argued that running to the edges of the galaxy was the only chance. On the floating cities of the Vrani, entire councils cried openly. They recorded desperate messages begging the Dravari for mercy. Their fleets were so small that even pirates frightened them, and the idea of facing an empire seemed impossible. Even the wise Kavaran Union felt despair. Their crystalline elders gathered in silence, their glowing bodies dim with fear. "No empire can fight the Dravari," one elder whispered. "Not unless they are mad." And that was when another voice answered, "Or human." The human patrols in the days after Corinth V, the galaxy watched every human movement. Small patrol fleets of humans moved across trade lanes, escorting convoys and protecting colonies. They were not large or grand fleets, just fast ships filled with men and women who laughed too loudly and spoke too casually about war. Aliens listening to human comms were bewildered. Before every battle drill, the humans played music. Before every jump through hyperspace, they cracked jokes. One Vrani observer recorded them and asked, "Why do they sound so calm? Do they not understand the danger?" But humans did understand. They simply reacted differently. The historian's lesson on the library world of Oris, Scholar Kailari continued her lectures. More and more aliens arrived to hear her explain the strange species called humanity. Her wide insectoid eyes studied the crowd before she spoke. "You ask why they laugh," she began. "You ask why they do not fear war. The answer is simple. War is not new to them. It is older than their machines, older than their empires. It is written into their history." She pulled up holograms of human history, images of storms, volcanoes, earthquakes, pictures of ancient predators with fangs and claws. Their planet is not soft like ours. It is a world that tried to kill them every day. And yet they survived. Floods took their homes. Fires burned their fields. Diseases swept their tribes. Still they endured. The aliens listened in stunned silence. And when they faced danger they could not control, Kailari continued, they learned to laugh, because laughter is how they say to death, "You will not break me." A Shirak in the crowd hissed softly. "But that is madness." Kailari's mandibles clicked in something close to a smile. "Yes, and that madness is why they may be the only ones who can fight the Dravari." The Dravari strike again. The Dravari were not blind. They had seen their defeat at Koran 5. Their commanders burned with humiliation. To lose even one skirmish against a young race was an insult. The High Emperor ordered another attack, this time larger and more brutal. A peaceful Vrani colony was chosen as the target. Unlike the Lotari, the Vrani had no soldiers, no fighters, not even a proper defense grid. Their entire culture was built on harmony and cooperation. They believed wars were things of the past. When the Dravari fleet appeared, they could do nothing but scream into the void. The humans heard those screams. The defense of Ilvari 3, a single human fleet, responded. 12 warships under the command of Admiral Soren. Hail the Vrani begged him to retreat. "You cannot face them," their governor cried over the comms. "They will crush you. Please save your own people. Do not waste your lives for ours." Admiral Hale only chuckled. "Governor, with respect, you don't know humans very well. We don't run from bullies." The Dravari fleet arrived with 40 ships, outnumbering the humans more than 3 to 1. They demanded surrender. Hale responded by opening every communication channel and broadcasting his fleet's laughter across the stars. Vrani citizens watched in horror as human crews sang songs and traded jokes, even while preparing for battle. One Vrani child asked his father, "Why are they happy?" The father could not answer. The battle began. Laughter in battle. The human ships darted like wolves, striking fast and vanishing into shadows. They used tactics the Dravari could not predict, turning what looked like reckless charges into traps. Their comms were filled with laughter and taunts. Pilots joked that the Dravari ships looked like flying coffins. Engineers sang songs while redirecting power to weapons. The Vrani watched helplessly, but then something strange happened. They began to feel less afraid. Somehow the humans' laughter calmed them. If humans could smile while facing death, maybe survival was possible. Hours later, the impossible happened again. The Dravari, humiliated a second time, retreated. The humans had won, though half their ships were damaged and hundreds of crew injured. Admiral Hale stood before the Vrani governor with a tired grin. "See?" he said. "Not so scary after all." The Vrani governor wept with relief. He bowed low before the admiral. "We do not deserve your sacrifice. Why did you come?" Hale's answer was simple. "Because we don't like bullies. And because laughter doesn't mean we don't take the fight seriously, it means we're ready for it." The galaxy watches the defense of Ilvari 3 was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of aliens saw human fleets laughing in the face of overwhelming odds. Billions saw them win. The reaction was unlike anything the Council had expected. On Shirak worlds, soldiers began painting human slogans on their armor. On Lothari colonies, young warriors practiced human songs before training drills. Even the timid Vrani, once too afraid to stand, started whispering that maybe, just maybe, they could fight. But the Dravari did not only fear laughter. They began to hate it. To them, laughter was humiliation. And humiliation was unforgivable. The Emperor's rage. In his throne room, the High Emperor of the Dravari smashed a ceremonial blade against the floor. "They mock us," he roared. "They laugh while they bleed. They laugh while they kill. This insult cannot stand. His advisors begged him to be cautious. Humanity was strange, dangerous, unpredictable. But the Emperor was too proud. "We will break them," he declared. "We will show them that their laughter dies with their worlds." The order went out. Assemble a grand fleet. Humanity would be taught a lesson that no one could forget. The human response when human leaders heard of the Emperor's command, they did not panic. They gathered in the chambers of the United Earth Directorate. Generals, admirals, and civilian leaders filled the room. On the screens behind them, recordings of human soldiers laughing in battle played over and over. One general frowned. "The galaxy thinks we're insane." Another grinned. "Good, let them think that. Fear is a weapon, but madness is worse. The Dravari won't know how to fight it." Ambassador Elena Vance, the same woman who had faced the council before, leaned forward. Her voice was calm, almost playful. "The Dravari think they are fighting a war of fleets. They are wrong. They are fighting a war of spirits, and spirits do not break when they are laughing." Seeds of alliance as human fleets prepared for larger battles. Alien ambassadors approached them one by one. The Lothari offered small fighter wings. The Kavaran promised access to hidden star routes. Even the timid Vrani, still shaking with fear, sent volunteers to serve as medics. It was not much, but it was the beginning of something new. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy was learning from humanity. For the first time, they were willing to stand. The lesson spreads in schools across alien worlds. Children practiced human songs. In military academies, instructors taught human history, showing how humans had faced endless dangers and survived. On the council world, a Vrani delegate stood tall for the first time and declared, "We must laugh with them. We must fight with them." The chamber filled with shock, then slow applause. Humanity's strange nature was no longer a mystery. It was becoming an inspiration. Closing scene in orbit above Earth, Admiral Hale watched his fleet regroup. Ships were repaired, crews patched up, but the laughter never faded. He stood on the command deck looking out at the stars. "They think we're insane," he murmured with a grin. "Maybe we are. But insanity wins wars." Behind him, the crew burst into another round of laughter, and somewhere across the galaxy, billions of aliens heard that sound and began to believe. The galaxy was no longer silent. Where once there had been fear, there was now the sound of something new, human laughter echoing across the stars. At first it had been strange. At first it had been unsettling. But as more battles were fought, that laughter spread from human throats to alien ones. Slowly other species began to smile. Some even dared to laugh themselves. The Dravari had wanted terror. Instead, they had awakened something they could not control. The gathering storm, the High Emperor of the Dravari kept his promise. From the deepest shipyards of his empire, from the hidden stations that had secretly built warships for centuries, he gathered a fleet larger than anything seen since before the Accord. Over 600 warships darkened the stars as they gathered near the Dravari capital. It was a force meant to crush not only human fleets but human spirit. The galaxy trembled at the news. Broadcasts showed endless lines of Dravari destroyers, cruisers, and carriers. Commentators whispered that no species could survive such power. Even some human allies began to falter. But the humans themselves, they only laughed. Human fleets mobilized. Admiral Soren Hale stood aboard his flagship, the Resolute. Around him floated dozens of human fleets, ships from Earth, Mars, Luna, and colonies far across the stars. They were not as numerous as the Dravari. They were not as advanced in raw firepower. But they were fast, clever, and above all filled with men and women who refused to be afraid. "Admiral," one young officer said, "they outnumber us 5-1. Hale smiled. "Perfect odds. Wouldn't want this to be boring." His officers chuckled, the sound filling the command deck. The comm channels carried that laughter across the fleet. Engineers laughed as they strapped down reactors. Pilots laughed as they slid into their cockpits. Soldiers laughed as they checked their weapons. When alien allies tuned in to listen, they heard that laughter, and though it made no sense to them, they felt a warmth they hadn't known in months. The first major clash, the first great battle, came at the border system of Relkar. The Dravari fleet swept in with overwhelming numbers. They expected the humans and their allies to scatter. Instead, they found themselves facing a united line of ships. The Dravari admiral broadcast a threat. "Surrender now, and I may let some of you live." The humans broadcast their own response, music. A loud, raucous human song filled every channel. a beat so fast and wild that it rattled even alien listeners. Pilots laughed and sang along. The Dravari, furious, opened fire. The battle raged for hours. Human ships weaved through enemy fire, allies covering their flanks. Every time a Dravari ship exploded, humans cheered and shouted jokes. "That one looked like fireworks," one pilot cried. Another laughed. "Hope the Emperor's watching, he'll need new toys." The Dravari had the numbers. But the humans had something else, unpredictability. They fought like no species the Dravari had ever faced. When the battle ended, the Dravari retreated again. They lost far fewer ships than the humans, but their morale had cracked. For the first time, alien analysts reported something shocking. Dravari crews had begun to hesitate. Some had even refused orders. They were not used to fighting enemies who laughed while dying. Inspiration across the stars. The victory at Relkar spread quickly. Across the galaxy, species began to imitate the humans. Lothari pilots painted smiles on their fighters. Shirak soldiers shouted jokes in the middle of combat drills. Even the timid Vrani began singing human songs before they went to work. The humans called it morale. Aliens called it madness. But whatever it was, it worked. In council chambers, leaders spoke with new courage. In marketplaces, civilians raised banners that said, "Laugh and fight." The war was no longer only humanity's burden. It was becoming a war of the galaxy, inspired by humanity's strange nature. The Dravari's frustration the High Emperor could not understand. To him, war was a tool of fear. War was meant to break the spirit of others. But these humans, they laughed at fear. They turned death into comedy. He summoned his advisors. "Why do they not tremble?" he demanded. "Why do they mock us when they should weep?" No advisor dared to answer. In his fury, the Emperor declared that any Dravari commander who lost to humans would be executed. This only worsened the problem. Dravari officers fought not out of pride but out of terror of their own ruler. And terror made them predictable. Humanity pushes forward with every victory, humans push deeper into contested space. They did not fight alone. Small fleets from other species joined them. Though their numbers were still small compared to the Dravari, together they created something the galaxy had not seen in thousands of years, a true alliance. One council broadcast captured it perfectly. The Vrani delegate, once too timid to speak, stood proudly and said, "If humanity can laugh at war, then so can we. If humanity can fight, then so must we. We are no longer afraid." The chamber erupted with cheers. The Battle of Carillon Rift. The greatest test came at Carillon Rift, a system of shattered asteroids and drifting debris. The Dravari sent a fleet of over 200 ships. The human-led alliance had less than half that number. Before the battle began, Admiral Hale addressed his fleet. His voice was calm, even cheerful. "Friends," he said, "the Dravari think they've trapped us here. They think this will be our grave. But you know what I think? I think we're about to put on a show they'll never forget." The fleets clashed. Explosions lit the rift like fireworks. Human ships darted between asteroids, using the debris as cover. Lothari fighters swooped like hawks, striking where the Dravari were weak. Shirak warships roared forward, inspired by human courage. Through it all, human laughter echoed. Pilots laughed as they spun through narrow gaps. Soldiers laughed as they stormed boarding actions. Engineers laughed as they patched holes mid-battle. At the height of the battle, a human ship sacrificed itself to destroy a Dravari carrier. The crew's last message was laughter and a simple line, "Guess we'll see you on the other side." The Dravari were shaken. They could not understand a species that laughed even at the moment of death. The humans won the battle, barely, but the galaxy celebrated it as if it were the end of the war. The turning tide, after Carillon Rift. The war changed. The Dravari still had more ships, more soldiers, more weapons, but they no longer had control of fear. The galaxy had seen too many human victories, heard too much human laughter. The Dravari's greatest weapon, terror, was broken. Reports came of Dravari crews refusing to fight. Some fled before battles even began. Others surrendered to humans, shaking and confused by the madness of their enemies. For the first time, it was not humanity that was feared. It was the Dravari who feared humanity. A galaxy united on the council world, leaders gathered again. This time they did not argue in panic. This time they made plans. Fleets were pledged. Resources were shared. Armies trained. And at the center of it all stood humanity. Ambassador Elena Vance addressed the chamber. Her smile was small but proud. "The truce is over," she said. "The Dravari wanted war. Well, now they have one, but they will learn what every predator learns when it hunts humans. We laugh the loudest when we are most dangerous." The chamber erupted in cheers. Even alien voices tried to imitate human laughter. It was awkward, strange, and beautiful. Closing scene in orbit above Mars, Admiral Hale stood on the deck of the Resolute. His fleets prepared for the next campaign. He watched as alien ships joined formation beside his own. A young officer asked him, "Sir, do you think we can really win?" Hale chuckled. "Win? Son, we already have. The Dravari wanted us to fear them. Instead, we made the whole galaxy laugh at them. The rest is just cleaning up." He turned back to the stars, his grin unwavering. The war was not over, but it was no longer just humanity's fight. It was the galaxy's, and together they were laughing in the face of an empire. The galaxy held its breath. After months of human victories, Dravari retreats, and the rise of a united allied force, the final confrontation was near. The Dravari Empire had gathered their supreme armada, a fleet unmatched in size or firepower, to crush humanity once and for all. Over 600 warships moved in formation, filling the void between stars like a dark storm. Their commanders believed the humans would break at last. They were wrong. Preparing the ultimate defense on Earth, Admiral Soren Hale and Ambassador Elena Vance stood before the assembled fleets. Human ships floated alongside Lothari, Vrani, Shirak, and Kavaran vessels, forming the largest allied armada the galaxy had ever seen. Every crew member knew the stakes. Every pilot, engineer, and soldier felt the tension in the air, and yet the humans laughed. "You all look too serious," Hale said with a grin. "Relax, the Dravari want fear. Let's give them the opposite." Engineers high-fived pilots. Soldiers polished weapons while singing battle songs. Even alien allies, initially confused, began mimicking the laughter they had heard in past battles. By the time the armada jumped to the final battleground, a strange sound filled the galaxy. Laughter, loud and unbroken, echoing across comm networks. The Dravari arrive. The Dravari fleet emerged from hyperspace in formation over the neutral system of Varanus. Their ships gleamed with dark metal, every surface polished and bristling with weapons. High Emperor Kelthar watched from his flagship, his golden armor gleaming beneath the light of the nearest star. "Prepare to crush them," he commanded. His voice was like iron. "Let no human survive. Their laughter ends today." The Dravari had confidence. They had weapons to obliterate planets, fleets capable of destroying entire star systems, and soldiers trained in centuries of war. They were certain victory would be theirs, but what they did not understand was humanity itself. The battle begins. The first shots were fired near the Varanus asteroid belt. Dravari capital ships opened fire, their weapons blazing. Human and allied fleets moved with precision but not with fear. Ships dodged asteroids, ducked behind moons, and maneuvered through the debris field with agility that left Dravari gunners frustrated. Human pilots shouted jokes over the comms. Engineers laughed as they redirected power. Soldiers cheered on the bridge as laser fire danced across the void. Lothari fighters screamed past enemy lines, shouting playful insults at their opponents. The Vrani sang strange songs over the channels inspired by humans that somehow carried courage and unity to all allies. Every Dravari strike was met with resistance. Every assault met with laughter, and every failure left the Empire more shaken. Humor as a weapon for the Dravari, this battle was unlike any other. Their soldiers were trained to fear, trained to obey, trained to destroy. But when their enemies laughed while dodging death, something changed. Morale cracked. Officers hesitated. Some refused to fire. Others began questioning the orders of the Emperor himself. A Dravari admiral screamed over comms at his crew. "Why do they mock us? Why do they sing and laugh? This is not how war is supposed to be." A human pilot swooping past the Dravari flagship responded over open channels. "Because war is better with a punchline." The laughter spread. It was infectious. Even alien allies joined, sending messages, songs, and jokes into the comm networks. Soon, the entire battlefield buzzed with voices that refused to submit to fear. The turning point hours into the battle, Admiral Hale spotted the Dravari flagship, the Oblivion, at the center of the formation. It was massive, armed to the teeth and bristling with weapons designed to annihilate entire fleets. "We take that ship," Hale said, "and this empire laughs its last laugh with us." Pilots grinned, engineers nodded, and the Allied fleets moved in perfect coordination. Humans led, using unpredictable maneuvers and daring strategies. They split into smaller groups, attacking from multiple angles, confusing the Dravari fleet. The flagship's shields were breached after a coordinated strike. Explosions rippled through its hull. The crew panicked. And yet before the final blow, human ships broadcast a message across all frequencies. "Hello, Emperor," a human voice rang out. "We hope you enjoy the show." Then the final strike hit, the collapse of the Empire. The explosion was massive but precise. The Oblivion disintegrated in a controlled blast, sending shockwaves through the remaining Dravari ships. Panic erupted. Ships turned and fled. Fleet after fleet surrendered to humans and their allies. The High Emperor watched helplessly. His pride was shattered. His forces, built for centuries, were crumbling before a species that laughed in the face of death. Aliens across the galaxy cheered. For the first time, centuries of fear and oppression ended. Humanity's message. After the battle, Admiral Hale addressed the galaxy from the flagship Resolute. His voice echoed across every channel. "The Dravari thought fear would stop us," he said. "They thought pain would break us. But we survived because we refused to bow. We survived because we laughed. Laughed at danger. Laughed at death. Laughed at the impossible. And now the galaxy is free." Alien leaders nodded. Even the Kavaran elders, who had studied humans for centuries, looked on with respect. Laughter, once strange and alien, had become the weapon that defeated the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. Rebuilding the galaxy, the aftermath of the war, was not quiet. Humanity and its allies worked tirelessly to repair systems, colonies, and star routes. Refugees returned home. Trade resumed. Culture, once silenced by fear, flourished, but humans kept their spirit alive. Even in reconstruction, humor thrived. Spaceports echoed with songs and jokes. Pilots greeted each other with laughter before leaving dock. Soldiers trained while singing. Everywhere, life carried a sense of joy, defiance, and hope. It became clear that the galaxy had learned a lesson that could never be forgotten. Fear was not the ultimate weapon. Laughter, courage, and unity were stronger. The Emperor's reflection, High Emperor Kelthar, imprisoned but alive, was taken to the Galactic Council. He watched humans freely walk among aliens, laughing, joking, and sharing stories. "I do not understand them," he said quietly to a guard. The Kavaran historian beside him shook their crystalline head. "No one can except humans themselves. They are the first species in the galaxy that fights with spirit instead of fear, that laughs at death and dares the universe to stop them." The Emperor fell silent. Perhaps for the first time he understood that the galaxy had changed forever. The legacy of laughter years passed. Stories of human bravery and laughter were told across generations. Schools taught the battles of Corin V, Ilvari III, Relkar, and Carillon Rift. Histories described how humans led the galaxy to victory not by fear, not by weapons alone, but by spirit. Children of all species played games inspired by human tactics. Aliens tried to sing human songs. Even festivals celebrated the human philosophy, courage with laughter. For humanity, it was simple. Survive, fight, and never forget to laugh. And across the galaxy, the words of Ambassador Elena Vance became legend. The truce may have ended, but fear did not rule us. Death did not rule us. We laughed, and the galaxy learned that no empire can survive laughter. The final scene, Admiral Hale stood on the deck of the Resolute, looking out at the stars. Human ships glimmered alongside alien fleets, moving peacefully, yet ready if needed. A young officer asked, "Sir, will they ever try again?" Hale smiled, eyes glinting. "Maybe, but they'll never forget what we did, and if they come back, we'll be waiting." With laughter, the officer laughed. Hale joined in, and soon the sound echoed through the fleet, across space, and into the hearts of every ally who had fought beside humanity. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had won, and they had done it the only way they knew how. Boldly, fearlessly, and laughing in the face of the impossible.